We had a wild show last week. Let me make sure my tech is working. Hopefully, I go live accurately. All right, Madtropolis, let me know if I'm live because I never know if I'm going to be live or not on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So, welcome to the Mad Gaines show. I am Cassandra Gaines, and we are here on another Friday. I am so excited to have you guys with me. This is going to be a very fun show. I've got a special guest for you, but as usual, please remember that LinkedIn is in beta form when it comes to live streaming. So it can still be a little spotty. So make sure that you head over to YouTube. That's where everybody is. And make sure you hit on the subscribe button and you hit on the live chat button. Make yourself some friends because that's where everybody is chatting and probably making fun of my tech skills and my drinking habits as usual. I see that we are live on LinkedIn. And I'm going to get started with introducing our very special guest. And it's Dan Price. Welcome to the show, Dan. I'm so excited to have you. I can already tell that people are going to freaking love you to pieces. Welcome.
I'm here to perform like a bass solo, right?
Yeah, I think that's. Can you actually play that thing, or is it just?
Yeah. No, I can.
For the ladies. Okay.
Well,
wow.
I mean,
because so what kind is that?
Oh, it's a Warwick. It's a flame maple bass.
Wow.
Warwick's known for like very resonant wood, and their most famous bass is called a P bass or a thumb bass, and it's like crazy resonant, but like a darker sound. This is called the Corvette Pro line. It's a little brighter sound.
Beautiful.
Because the maple makes the sound brighter.
I think so beautiful. Oh, I see people already pinging me saying I love the guitar. Yeah, the guitar is necessary.
It's been my most prized possession since I was 15 years old.
And that specific guitar?
Yeah.
Wow. I kind of thought that you just bought it. It looks new.
Guitar players have like 1,000 different guitars, right? So it's a little different for them versus like a bass player. You pretty much have one bass. You might also have like a big upright acoustic bass, but that's going to be a different situation.
Similar to lawyers with books, except for sometimes we don't use the books. They just are for looks. But
yeah,
I imagine you use the guitars.
I have a friend who's a surgeon, a head and neck surgeon. And he likes to, have some nighttime activities that made me question, like, should he be a surgeon or whatnot, right? Nothing too bad, actually, but I just sheltered. But I went into his office one time, and he had 2 like complete bookshelves full of like a volume book about surgery, and he knew like all the content from it. And I was like, oh yeah, if I had to read all that, I think I maybe need a little help going to sleep and stuff too.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I'm like, when you become a lawyer or even a doctor, not like I would know, but you've got to make sure that you love reading books because that's like all you do. You see stuff on TV and you're like, wow, this is amazing. These lawyers going in and out of trial and doing these fantastic things. No, we just read books and make phone calls and type and grow old. It's not that exciting. Okay, so I brought you on here for one main question because I'm selfish. Hold on. Sad tech skills. Let me just check my tech because everybody likes to make fun of me. All right, ready, you guys? I learned how to do this today. I'm going to move. Look at Cassandra go. Oh, no, it's not full. Hold on. All right. This is the question I wanted to ask. Is Trevor Noah as hot in real life as he is like on TV? Because I practically drool every time I watch that show.
He's actually way hotter.
Is he really?
In person, yeah, definitely.
That's my dream, is to be on that show. And like, I don't know why he would ever want a boring ass lawyer on that show, but that's my dream, is to go on there. And I don't know if I'd be able to talk. I think I would just sit there and stare at him and not know what to do. But you did well. I watched the whole thing. Were you nervous?
Okay, so I have this weird thing where sometimes after I have to like do something important the next day, and to be fair, like, like an important work day for me is more important than going on the Daily Show.
Wow, good for you. Dang.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's just times where like the stuff that we need to get done is going to be more consequential for me and anybody I care about and everything I care about. Anything that
Okay.
could happen on the Daily Show. So it's like it kind of helps with that a little bit. Where like I think I do enjoy it, but here's where I do mess up. A lot of times I get a little too casual about it, and I will, because I'm not much of a drinker. And so I don't do like super great with alcohol, but occasionally I'll find that the day before something like that, I'll drink a little bit more than I normally do. And then I won't sleep super well. And then when I'm like doing this thing that should be fun, because, I grew up watching The Daily Show. It was one of my favorite shows growing up. And my brothers watched it, and I watched it basically every night, when I was a kid. So it's like, this is cool that I'm going on the show. And I wish I like had slept better last night and like followed my health routines a little better, because then I would be enjoying it more rather than feeling like, oh, I'm tired, but I gotta, do this thing that should be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, there's going to be a general theme in this show, this episode, which is you're a better person than me, because I don't care what would happen. If you were like, Cassandra, tomorrow you're going to be on The Daily Show, I'd be like, Mom, don't even talk. I don't even know who you are. Employees, go away. I need to hit the spa for like a whole day.
That's what I should do. That is the right thing to do. That's objectively the right thing to do. Because it's not like you're going to get asked to go on The Daily Show every day. So you should enjoy it. Yes.
It's amazing. Like, wow. Okay. So for some of you people, many of you people watching now, they know you, but for those who do not, if you could introduce yourself. And also, I've told them that you are the CEO paying your employees a minimum of $70,000 a year, which for many of us, our heads just explode when we hear that. And so we've got to dig into this story, because I think it's something cool and something that we should think about in the transportation industry. So I'll let you introduce yourself. I'll get off screen for a moment so my face isn't.
Oh, there you went. Okay, I'm Dan Price. If you have heard of me or my company, Gravity Payments, it might be because you heard about how in 2015, I cut my pay from over $1 million a year to $70,000 a year to fund a program at our company, Gravity Payments, where we decided to pay all employees a minimum wage of $70,000 per year. That doubled the pay of about a third of the people at the company. It gave an increase to a third, and there were a third that were already making over that, so it didn't impact them. And then we, as a company, oh, you're back. I couldn't see you for a little bit. Much better. I felt like I was like giving a lecture there for a second.
I try not to do it to people, but I was like, I got to check the tech and the chat and stuff. So I'm like, let them talk, and then I'll figure this all out. So wait, we got to back up.
So anyway, people, we for us, it was like a really big deal, but what we didn't realize was how big of a deal it would be for other people.
Okay. So you went from making, what was it, $1 million a year? Something around that? Okay. Yep. Can you tell me, like, did you have did you have $1 million lifestyle, or were you, again, one of those good people where like?
No, I didn't have $1 million lifestyle, but okay, here's the deal. I would love picking up, like let's say one of my buddies is getting married, and I want to pick up like an expensive bar bill for all of like his groomsmen or something like that. You know what I mean? I like doing that stuff. Yeah. That gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to do that stuff. So I would sometimes spend a fair amount of money, but it would be on like stuff like that. Like it'd be like, oh, one of my employees is getting married, and like I picked up a round of drinks for like 50 people to celebrate or something. Like
man, you're a good guy. Okay, well, I like to buy things for myself.
Fun, you know what I mean? That's part of what kills me about COVID, and also what is true is since all of that 70K stuff, which I mean, this is so worth it. That was one of the things that I did kind of sacrifice. Was I still do that, but I kind of can't do it at the level that I used to. Or like, before, like, my favorite band's coming to town, And so I'm going to buy like 20 tickets to the show and invite all my friends to go with me and like, pay for the
You're
tickets, whatever.
splurging.
Yeah, just like fun stuff like that, like hang out with our friends kind of thing. But and I do have a boat, which I've honestly questioned myself in a pandemic. Am I morally okay with owning a boat? Because it's just horrible to think about how many people are like negatively impacted. But then I'm like, Dan, you're being way too self-centered right now. Like,
I think you're good, Dan. I think you've been doing really well.
Can to help those people, but like, you don't have to like try to like figure out like the next way to like upend your life or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So wait, we have to go back. All right. So you're making all this money and then you're like, I want to, well, wait, how did you decide that you were going to, because nobody's heard the story. I've heard it a million times because I love your pieces. But how did you decide to all of a sudden you woke up one day and you were like, I'm going to pay everybody $70,000 and
so
no more bachelor parties?
There were, have you ever had one of those situations where like 3 or 4 like really big things in your life like all converge to the same thing?
Yes.
It's crazy, right?
Yes.
So I've told like 3 or 4 stories in answering that question, but I think they're all kind of equally true because they were all kind of converging in my mind. But probably the one that I've told the least is there's this woman, Rosita Barlow, that works at Gravity. And I accidentally found a packet where she was doing training to work at McDonald's on a night shift. And she was like a manager of at McDonald's all night. And then she'd work at Gravity in the day. And she was like she was probably as important as anybody in the company and kind of unquestionably so. And, it was just really jarring. And I remember at the time, she told me later that she had turned down like a $50,000 or $60,000 a year job to take like a $30,000 a year job with us. But she had a lot of student debt and stuff. And so she was really like just barely making it. And by the way, she's given me permission to share this. I write about this in my book, Worth It. So
I'm pretty sure you told Kelly Clarkson this story too.
Yeah. So, so she like that was happening. And then I was on this hike with my friend Valerie, who I really respected and admired. And she was telling me about her $200 rent increase was basically making it so that like she couldn't pay her bills. And then I had read this Princeton study that kept being, I read a lot of business books, and there's this Princeton study just kept being referenced in all these like psychology, business books, books about philosophy. No matter what I would read about, they'd keep referencing this thing where like your well-being is kind of is improved, or in other words, it's harmed if you don't have enough money.
Yes.
Until you meet this threshold here, and then you can keep having more money, but your well-being's not really improved. And so therefore, if we're trying to maximize for human well-being, $1 here is more valuable than $1 here. But yet we're taking all the dollars here and we're putting all of them up here. So this is all kind of like hitting me intellectually. And it was like stories like Rosita and stories, of like Valerie and others. I mean, I could tell you a bunch more, but it would take forever. And, like, I feel like I get way too much credit, honestly, because I think it was fairly obvious that people like Rosita were the ones building the value in the company. And I don't really think I deserve a lot of credit for recognizing that because it was like completely obvious. And then
can't be that obvious because there's not a lot of CEOs doing what you're doing at all. In fact, I think many of them would be like, no, I like my income the way it is.
I think the fact that people don't see it and whether or not it's obvious are two different things. Because
good point.
You can have something that's obvious and you can have people, but there could be some kind of a filter that's making it look different. And I think right now, if we look at, just how much of our lives are organized around how to make things better for business,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like we had this idea of like invest in our businesses and that will help all of us. But that idea got like so ingrained and so
It's
deep.
amazing how ingrained it's been.
Yeah. And so, like, we are basically at this point living in more of a religious reality than anything else, where we're like all trapped in this like worshiphood of like economic statistics and business and all this stuff. And most people, to be fair, don't care about that at all. But their lives are still somewhat being influenced all the time by these forces. And so the idea of like trying to create like a little bit of like a tent where people can live a little bit that don't want to live in that world, like that's pretty exciting for us.
So when you had the employee that was working at McDonald's that you accidentally found her, I tell my husband that all the time. I accidentally found this stuff. When you accidentally found her training manual, whatever it was. So you were trying to decide to implement this new wage. And like, where did the money come from? Did you have to increase your cost of service? Because you own what, Gravity Payments? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Gravity Payments, and yes. So basically, at that time, we were kind of, if I'm recalling correctly, and it's been a while, I want to say we were kind of thinking that we'd make a profit that year of like 2.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was being paid $1 million a year. And the program was going to cost something like 2.7 or 3 million, something like that. So it would basically take up like all my pay plus all of our profit. And that's why, you know, now in hindsight, everyone's like, oh, of course it worked, you know, and all this kind of stuff. But at the time, it took some faith, but I had a lot of data that I was looking at over the years where basically like every time we behaved in a way that was kind of like good for customers and employees, there wasn't necessarily like a one-to-one reward for it, but it just kind of felt good and it kept us around.
Yeah.
And so much about business and even life, so much about life in 2020, especially, is so much about just sticking around, you know, and like making it through and you just keep working, you keep doing the absolute best you can. You know, one of the things we talk about is like, we can make a bigger difference for people in some ways right now than we could before. It's for tragic reasons, but like we need people to feel that way, you know, to go out there and like keep working. And, you know, it was kind of one of those things where every time we took a step in that direction, there was some kind of a reward. Now, the reward wasn't always financial, but, you know, we still kind of made it work financially too. I
would like to let you know that I've apparently disappeared. I don't know why.
Okay. I mean, this is a bass song.
Yeah, you're going to have to play a song because I can't. I don't know why I've disappeared. See, this is what happens to me. This is the technology.
I had I guess a big like Croatian TV show or something asked me to do a remote interview with them yesterday.
Yeah.
My grandma's Croatian, so she made me do it. And
she made me do it.
They were like, "Oh, do you have your bass drum?" I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Did you know the bass player for Nirvana's Croatian?" I was like, "Oh yeah."
He is? He was?
I guess so. Wow. And then they're like, "Can you play Smells Like Teen Spirit?" And I was like, "Sure."
We would love to hear this because apparently I'm a hot mess.
I mean, I can plug my amp in if it takes too much longer.
I mean, it's my show. We get to stay on here as long as we can while I try to figure out my life. Apparently.
How are you feeling right now? Like emotionally? Like what emotions?
All right, it's a good question. I'm not gonna lie, there's a little bit of embarrassment right now. Not because like Madtropolis knows. It's because like of you. You're freaking famous. And here I am. I can't even get my shit together. I'm like so excited you're coming on the show. And my technology gives out. So I had to switch cameras because this shit happens to me all the time, Dan. So I'll give you, I didn't tell you this when I invited you on the show. I didn't say like, hey, my show is scrappy and shit goes down all the time. So one thing is I have cameras all around the floor and microphones and cords everywhere, just in case something goes wrong. I start plugging in shit, and I'm like, don't worry, guys, I got this. Someday, I will like have tech people. Dan, you'll see me one day, and I'll have like a whole team, and I'll show them to you, and I'll be like, remember when you came on and everything went to shit? It doesn't anymore. Look at my team over there. Look at them. They're so happy. They're all making $80,000 a year, Dan.
Can you describe like how they're dressed and like what their vibe is?
They're all gonna have like scrappy ass clothing on. They're gonna wear whatever makes them comfy. Some of them aren't gonna do their hair. Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. And then some of them will just be shaking their heads and be like, this crazy chick. Why did I ever take this job? Oh, because she said she'd pay me $80,000. So you have a lot of questions.
And I love that dude that thinks he looks like Jesus.
So you have a lot of questions rolling in. One person, all right, you ready for this? Wow, the questions have really been rolling in. Someone says the hair is for the ladies, the guitar is keeps. Truth, right now, I have to tell you something. It's truth time. I purposely targeted every woman in the industry for this show because we have no eye candy in our industry. We only have a couple. And so that's not very nice of me, but I have to tell you that. So let me see. There were some other questions. So one person, very smart person, said he asked if when you decided to pay everybody $70,000 and you said a third of your employees were paid a significant more money at that salary. Yeah. Did they have to do more work? Like, could you not hire as many people so they had to take on more work? And listen, we don't care what the answer is. People want more money, so it's okay.
That's a great question. I mean, I think that with our team, we're pretty democratic in how we make decisions. So, for example, how many employees we're going to hire in any given year, we all decide that together as 200 people. And so like how we're going to distribute the workload and everything, we get together and we strategize about that. Now, it's true that like, you know, at times like we will have like senior leaders make decisions, but only kind of in like a temporary way or like crisis mode does that usually happen. Most of the time, pretty much all the big decisions are made kind of with everyone involved.
How?
And then
like, do you do polls?
We do polls, surveys. You know, like sometimes Tammy and I will meet with like literally either one-on-one or in small groups, like every single employee in the company over like a Friday to Monday period. Like we literally spent Friday to Monday and like 100 hours or something like that and talked to every employee.
Dang, I want a job at your place.
Yeah, so, but that's not like the most efficient way of doing it, but that was in a crisis. That was like during the whole onset of the pandemic. But like normally what we would do is we'd send out a bunch of survey questions. We'd even survey on what we wanted to survey about. We'd talk about that strategically, have conversations. And then send out surveys, like talk about like where do we need to change, where do we need to improve, where do we need to like shift strategically to be relevant, who needs more resources and why, and would you be willing to like stand up and kind of defend it in front of everybody?
Yep.
And then most of the time the way it works is I try to gather everybody's kind of thoughts and like put them into like a center position where everybody feels like they had some and truly did have some impact over what that looks like. And then I'll take it out to everybody and say, did I get it right? And I'll give them a chance to kind of, and it always changes in that phase. And usually that takes anywhere for me 5 to 7 rounds, although maybe like 1 or 2 people would
Jesus.
participate in all of those with me, but most people would just participate in 1 or 2. And then you kind of take it back out to everybody. And I think if you do it right, everybody feels like, yeah, I made that, you know? So it's actually probably no different than any other creative process in terms of, you know, you could have like a film director who's like, everybody do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. Or you could have a film director that'd be like, okay, like what's everyone's ideas? Like, how do we put it together? And there's not really, in terms of which ones kind of win and make the best films, you know, that's such a subjective thing. But I know for me, working in the environment where you're expected to like dictate everybody's life,
Yes.
that would suck. I would hate that. That would be awful.
Yeah, I would too. But you know what the criticism is? Is that because I do the same thing. I like to, we call MADGAINES followers, we call it Madtropolis. I didn't create that. Somebody else did. And it's just stuck. But I survey Madtropolis all the time, asking them this, that, this, that. And some people come back to me and they'll be like, Cassandra, just make a freaking decision. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Why do you care what the little people think? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, 'cause I don't want to, I want them to love the show. I want them
Yeah.
to be happy. It's
Right.
but it's interesting to see that. Here's another question that popped
So
up.
just to directly answer that question though, is
Yeah.
it ebbed and flowed. Was it greater overall or less overall? I'm not really sure. And it was kind of all things that would be determined on like a department by department basis. And like kind of those departments deciding, do they want to go leaner and work harder, or do they want to like have an extra person and maybe have to like, you know, ask for a little bit more money from the overall budget?
Makes sense. The next question you have is from one of our famous shippers, Ron Kane, who was a very famous man last Friday. He said, how much work went into determining the $70,000 number, and has that number changed?
Very little work went into it. Just me triangulating all my thoughts and asking a bunch of people and looking at that Princeton study. Now, a lot of work went into the work I looked at, if that makes sense. So maybe I spent, you know, like something like 40 or 50 hours on it. But the people I was reading and standing on their shoulders had spent thousands and thousands of hours on it. So I felt reasonably grounded kind of in the zeitgeist of that, and felt like this is the right amount where, you know, people will at least have enough to pivot if what they're doing isn't right. So, but like, could I defend it, you know, to the nth degree? Probably not. Does it need to change over time? Absolutely. Do we have an exact plan for that? We don't really right now. We're trying to get through the pandemic, and that's basically what we're thinking about, is like trying to help all of our small businesses stay open.
So how has that been going since COVID hit? Did you have to lay people off?
We lost 50% of our revenue. We probably would have had to lay off between 15 and 30% of people to stay in business. We had 3 months to survive. We took it to our employees and we're like, we have no idea what to do. And they came up with this crazy idea and then pulled it off somehow to basically have a anonymous pay cut fundraiser that could be temporary for whatever time people wanted. And some people were like, you don't have to pay me for the next 6 months or a year. Some people were like, oh, I can only give up 5% because my spouse just lost their job and I have supporting a family of 5 and we just signed up for a mortgage and we don't know how we're going to meet our bills, but I want to give something because I'm like, I so want to make sure that no one gets like left behind right now. And so it was really wild. Anyway, our employees like totally bailed out the company and saved it on an anonymous basis, so people wouldn't know who did what. There wouldn't be any pressure. I mean, it's really crazy. I would have never thought that anything like that could ever happen in business ever.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And so the transportation industry was hit really hard, as everybody else was, with COVID, with the impact of COVID from a business perspective. And it was very interesting because it illuminated great leaders. And it also illuminated the leaders that needed to work on their leadership values. I think that we found a lot of leaders I shouldn't say a lot. There were leaders who laid off a significant amount of employees, and they didn't take any pay cuts. They forced employees to continue to enforce their non-competes. And now that the trucking industry is doing a little bit better, we don't hear a whisper about what happened to those employees who were laid off. And we saw a lot of bad leadership. So I remember in COVID, when everything was going down, I remember your posts, and it was kind of a voice of leadership in a time where people were just, it felt as though in two things: either layoffs were happening because their numbers required it as a business, or it was used as a pretext to lay people off. COVID was being used as a pretext. And in our industry, we know a lot of these companies. We know who's using it as a pretext. So it was a very frustrating time. So it's amazing that you polled your employees.
I almost, though, wonder if we're getting leadership wrong. And I so appreciate you saying that, because, to be honest, like, coming up in the part of the business world that I did, and I think most people are like this that come up, you're basically just taught there's one way to handle that situation. You do the layoffs as deeply as you could ever imagine ever needing to. So you have one round and one round only, so that everyone's either completely gone or completely safe.
Huh.
So that you can at least create safety for all the people that are there. And then pretty quickly, you should turn around and start hiring again to send a message
we saw that
to those people. And so that's the level of manipulation that's taught in the business world. Is it's better because it looks better and it works more seamlessly. It's better to actually lay somebody off that you don't even need to lay off, because it will help your narrative when you start hiring again. And we're just taught that's the only way. And so, I think that, for me, I'm just like literally applying like first grade logic to a situation where, the people I work with every day, they do such a good job. It would just be crazy for me to like throw anybody under the bus. And maybe there's some people there, for example, at Gravity that like, they're not in the exact right role for them or something, where they're actually legitimately, they're not doing like the absolute best job that anyone has ever done, maybe through no fault of their own. But I guarantee you there's somebody who's doing a really good job who cares about that person and doesn't want them being mistreated, if at all possible. Doesn't want them to lose their job in the middle of a pandemic. So it just seemed like remarkably simple to like connect these dots. And I think the only reason why I get so much credit, which I think is not really deserved, is just that the orthodox way of doing it in this like kind of religion of business is just so stupid.
It is. And often leaders don't think that employees and the rest of the industries even see what they're doing. And often we do. For example, someone just noted in the comments that the rehiring is often used to, it isn't the same people in most companies will use it as an opportunity to upgrade personnel or get cheaper people.
And get younger, cheaper people.
You got it. And one thing we heard from one big company that laid a bunch of people off that refused to come on the show, because they know I'll ask the question, which is, they, because I received personal messages, they laid off people who were top performers, but those people were in sales and they left with their non-competes. So it's not like they could solicit the customers. So they left this huge book of business with the company. And then the company could hire someone younger and cheaper to come in and take that big book of business at a cheaper commission standard too. So it was like this scheme going on as well, at least what I'm hearing. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the rumor mill is. So it's crazy that COVID has really illuminated some of these interesting practices. And I hope that people remember this when they pick who their employer is going to be in the future.
Yeah. Well, so, and to be honest, like like that's something that I think is kind of TBD in a way. And I don't mean that to try to be negative, but more to be motivational,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there's a danger of either thinking everything's going to work out and then kind of staying on the sidelines, or thinking everything's not going to work out and then staying on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's like, okay, like we all work within a system. We all have major blind spots. If I work on my blind spots like crazy, maybe I can get my blind spots from being 98% to 97%. And I'm not saying that in a self-deprecating way. It's just like that for everybody, where like I feel like we all get so much out of like working on like just trying to see things more clearly and like think for ourselves. But at the same time, it feels like it's tougher and tougher to do that every day,
It
because
does.
there's so much being thrown at us. And also, it's hard to parse through which part is kind of drama versus which part is actually substantive that will really like impact our lives. And that's something that is like really, I don't know, how do you deal with that right now? I mean, especially like doing something like this, right? You're kind of staying in the loop on a lot of these things.
Yeah. And trying it's weird dance that I do with this show, which is try not to roast people, but I'm not known for being uh politically correct either, because the show is about education, but the show is also about pushing the industry. And that's why you're on this show, is because we do need to address that there are some serious pay issues and pay inequalities in this antiquated industry, and it needs to be addressed. In fact, when I was about to have you on, people messaged me and or called me and told me they were a little timid to hit the thumbs up button or make a comment when I posted I was going to have you on, because they were afraid their employers would be watching. And so it's very interesting to see how this goes on. But I hope that
I hear that from people a lot.
I bet
And
you do.
I see a lot in my DMs that's very upsetting.
Hmm. Yep, I see it too. So, other questions that were coming through, by the way, one was somebody wanted you to talk about the people who were upset. I know you've talked about this a lot. The people who were upset that you raised the wages to 70,000, and then those people who were already at 70,000 were like, "What the hell?" How did you handle that? Because I thought about that for a long time. If I was ever to implement your strategy, and I don't know what I would do.
Honestly, internally at the company, we had two people that kind of spoke out against it publicly. Were there other people that didn't like it, maybe that didn't speak out? It's possible. But there were a lot of people that really liked it, even in that group of people that were already being paid well. And there were
Hmm.
a lot of things being thrown around like, hey, I'm paid really well, and I feel really good that now I know the people that I'm working with are being paid well. I didn't realize how much financial stress was on their shoulders given the relative
Yep.
inequality we had.
Yep.
And now that I understand how all that works, I wouldn't have been comfortable with the previous situation if I was fully knowledgeable about it. So
Hmm.
thank you for solving that problem. I was getting that message from the vast majority. Now,
That's good.
there were two people, and I respect and think they're both right, and what they say is valid. There was one, her name's Maisie, and she came out and she basically said that she had to work her way up, and it was helpful for her career to like have to like really grind hard at the bottom and work her way up, and she felt like that helped her learn a lot. So she didn't agree with it kind of philosophically and decided to leave, for that reason. And then we had a guy, Grant, who decided to leave. Again, him and I have a good relationship. We're friends, like no hard feelings at all. But he said he was like, felt like this would create a super high entitlement culture. And,
Hmm.
he's not totally wrong in the sense that, yeah, I mean, if you get treated better by anybody in your life, you're going to kind of expect to be treated better by that person or
Hmm.
company or situation. And, one of the things that people get upset about with that one is we had like 8.1 out of 10 employee happiness every month prior to the big raise. then it went to 9.1, then it went to 8.7, then 8.3, then back to 8.1 like 3 or 4 months later, which is exactly what a social psychologist would predict because our brains basically acclimate to our new
Yep.
normal.
Makes sense.
People totally missed the point. The point of it wasn't to get people's approval. The point was their lives would get better. And so like we had like multiple people that were like, oh, I can fulfill like my lifelong dream that I have now. For some that was buying a home, for some that was having babies. In fact, our babies skyrocketed 10x a number of
That's
babies
amazing.
from 0 to 2 a year prior to 55 in the last 5 years. 10x skyrocketing of first-time home ownership. 70% of the people paid down debt. There were 2 guys that lost over 100 pounds. People beat cancer. People, said goodbye to like elderly parents that were dying, in peace, and they had the financial security to like be like a positive part of that interaction rather than like having to like scrounge for a plane ticket and then like crash with somebody. These are all like real important things. And by the way, our customers didn't suffer at all. Like our customers aren't paying any more than they were before. Could we have maybe charged them less if we didn't do it? Yeah, but they didn't really ask us to. They're really happy with us in general. And they like how we're doing things. And we could have maybe taken a few extra dollars a month and given it to them, but I think they'd rather, feel good about who they're working with.
I would too. Because, are your top competitors like companies like Stripe? Is that
Stripe,
one of them?
Square,
okay.
Yeah, and then
because I switched to you when I started learning your story, and I was like, "Oh hell no! I don't care if I'm paying an extra percentage. I would prefer to have a company that I value and I understand their values."
Yeah.
So I can completely see why your customers are like, "Just do your thing."
That reminds me though. So I'm excited because one of my favorite like TV anchors, her name's Julia Chatterley. She like randomly hit me up and DM'd me to come on her show. And then when I was on her show, like a few weeks ago, she was like, oh, I want you to come back in like a month or something and explain to me what you guys do. So if it's okay with you, maybe I could take 20 seconds and practice my...
Yes, do it. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to give you full screen?
No. I like it.
The full screen freaks people out.
No one's going to like the full screen. So basically, like, I'll tell you kind of in a narrative form. So I was in a rock band growing up, playing rock music, and there was a coffee shop that would let us use them as a venue at nighttime because they were a coffee shop. They didn't have a lot of customers, and we would just pack the place out. And the woman that owned it, Heather Hempel, she was incredible, and she was such a good business person in that she gave so much. But she was kind of an easy target for like big corporations, and the big corporations pounce on people like that. And one of the ways they pounce is through the credit card processing. So she was paying like way too much, bad service. So I'm like, I'm just going to help them. I'm just going to defend her just by like arguing and holding them accountable. Then I started like building up some clients from that and got enough where I was like, okay, I need to build my own product because this other stuff is so terrible. So, but then it was like, okay, we hook in and we integrate with like 10,000 different devices. And we're doing all this stuff. And basically anybody, we're more of a financial company in the sense of like anybody that wants to just make sure they can get great service, secure, great deal, don't have to worry, no stress. They can just work with us. But then these companies like Mind Body Online started, where basically they would come to Seattle and we would have 95% of the yoga studios for our clients. And they'd come and all of a sudden we'd lose all of our yoga studios because they would get all the consumers to basically sign up for their app. And then they would go to the business and be like, you're going to pay us way more than what you're used to paying. Because if you don't, we're basically going to interrupt the relationship between you and your consumers.
Wow.
And like steal your consumers and send them to your competitors. And so I was like, wow, this is like even way nastier than the stuff I kind of grew up with that got me into doing this. So then we had to build all this software that's basically all the payments, back-end payment software for any software company that basically wants to not do that. Any software company that wants to be like a Gravity Payments type company and build software for, it could be transportation industry. You know, we have like heavy equipment dealers that use our software, but we do the payments and security part of the software. so that the actual software company can just focus on like the interface and the user experience and all those things. And then we've started to just naturally invest in some of these software companies, but only the ones that are really committed to not kind of screwing over these small businesses the way so the software companies you mentioned, they're trying to basically all form monopolies where they can just like stick their elbows out and they tell their investors that's what they're doing.
Yes, we know how that feels here in the transportation industry, just so you know.
And Square recently just did a 10-cent price increase just because they could. No one could stop them. And since then, their stock price has more than doubled because they proved to their investors they can basically do it to these small businesses and not really have any accountability. And then on the other side, you have the legacy companies who are almost like they lay off all their employees. They consolidate. So you have like 10 companies, becomes 5, becomes 4, becomes 2, because they keep buying each other, where basically they can be a monopoly. And then they are like slowly increasing the prices on the small businesses too. So you have kind of this like new wave of like big companies raising prices through one strategy, and then the old guard of companies doing it. And it's basically just kind of fits into this whole larger narrative about how the little guy has never been squeezed, you know, in our lifetimes, the way it's happening right now and how it's going faster and faster.
The same narrative is going on right now in the transportation industry. So people can relate to what you're saying for sure.
Horrifically, I give talks like this for a lot of industry groups.
Yeah.
And they all say that to me.
Say the same thing? Unbelievable. We literally had a debate last Friday about investors coming in and pushing money into one company. I don't know if it's true or not, but and pushing out other companies that have been around for a long time and have been doing a great job. And what they're doing is they're undercutting. They have investor funding, so they can afford to price at a loss to gain market share. Yeah. And that has become a hot topic in our industry. So it's like these practices are a really big deal.
But here's one point that people miss. When you have 3 people that control as much wealth as 50% of your population, 150 million people, that money needs to go somewhere. It needs to be invested somewhere. But when you continually squeeze the middle class and everybody below, there are fewer and fewer people that can be genuine consumers. And so eventually the money that's being hoarded exceeds the amount of money that is being circulated in any meaningful way. And then that money needs to be invested somewhere. So it creates this glut of kind of like a certain type of competition where it's like very unfair competition. And in order to justify all the losses that you're talking about, they have to do some pretty evil shit on the back end to pay themselves back from all those losses. And the investors can rightly say, we suffered all those losses, so now we have to squeeze all of these other groups as soon as we have any kind of leverage. And so there is like innovation and improvement that happens, and I don't want to discount that. And sometimes it's hard to tell what is what.
We are having a hard time telling what is what.
Yeah,
that's what we're in our industry. We are.
There's certainly a lot of just faking it and kind of almost like
are y'all hearing this right now?
Social Ponzi scheme happening.
Like no, this is like we literally sit here. Uber Freight just got all this funding, and everybody does half a chunk of our industry that's like, they don't even have technology. They don't even have, they're using Excel sheets. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what people are saying. And it's smoke and mirrors. And here they get this investment so they can continue to undercut and get this market share. And again, guys, I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying this is what people are saying. You've hit it right on the head. It's kind of interesting.
Well, and then some of the government policies that prop up the wealthy, that create this K-shaped recovery where the wealthy do so well and everyone else does so poorly, and you have this massive wealth transfer, that massively accelerates this trend that happens. And so in a way, we, the people, are paying for something that's bad for all of us.
Yep.
And when that happens, you have to ask yourself why, like how, like we must be being manipulated in some way.
Yep.
We must we must be kind of like not really being as clear-eyed as we could be. Otherwise, we wouldn't, as a people, vote for something that's bad for us.
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we're trained because it's weird how many people are okay with the extreme wealthy continuing to be wealthy. They're okay with the wealthy not paying as much in taxes that like my mom's paying. So it
Yeah.
doesn't make any money. Like it's interesting. I feel like we have been trained in a way to
But
accept this as a norm.
but I will challenge everybody out there because I have woken up in some major ways over the past year or two. And a lot of it has to do with just the level of connection between just economics and some of these topics, where a lot of times the money topics are the real drivers that we need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other ones, which are very important, people are very passionate about social issues and human rights issues. And those are really, really important. But I think if we can be more ultra aware of some of the economic manipulation, I think
Yep.
we can stop some of what's driving those other forms of manipulation.
To go back to the, oh shit, what was the word you used? True consumer? Wait, damn it.
Just
What?
the consumer being squeezed. You have this huge supply of wealth and fewer and fewer people to sell and make things for.
Yes, because I was thinking about how I do want to. I noticed you have a book out and you had promoted we should buy the book at our local like bookstores.
Yes,
And
don't buy it from Amazon, whatever you
don't
do.
buy it from Amazon. And I kept thinking like
You might have to wait an extra week or two to
but
get
it's
it.
worth
But
it.
call your local bookstore, or there's a site I'm promoting called bookstore.org where they give 100% of their profits to small local bookstores. So you don't need to buy my book, but if you're going to buy it from a local bookstore, not Amazon if possible. And if you're somewhere where you can only get it from Amazon, it's hard to be pure because honestly,
That was the word you used, pure, because some of us can't afford. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to criticize anybody for anything, really. My first employee, I paid him, he's still there, but first long-term employee, paid him $12 an hour and no benefits. It's like I paid him everything I had at the time. So it's like, I really can't criticize anybody for anything. I'm just trying to point out like what I see at a systemic level, as opposed to like trying to like only focus on like some personality that drives people crazy because of horrible things they do or something.
Makes sense. I think that
I feel like there's other people that do that part.
I feel like there is too. And I'm glad we got into this topic. I think that it's been one that's bugging me for a long time. Oh wait, this is what I wanted to ask. We have to go back to gravity payments. Dumb it down for us. Okay, so for all of us that have like, I think mostly websites.
If you have a merchant account, then we can help you with that. And also if you use software or make software that kind of like helps you do your business, that has like a electronic payment type component.
Yeah, that's what I do. And like I switched to Gravity because I had Stripe, and then I switched. But I was told by the developers that I had to use Stripe because that was the only one that like uniformly integrated. But the developer was wrong.
That's what they get people to say. And they use that basically to try to create a vibe of like, oh, they're the only ones, they're the monopoly. And so we're this company that literally has like, I don't know what the exact math is, but maybe we have like 1/100th of the resources they do. But we have a really strong team that's like committed and like independent and just like tries to do a good job and help out. And it turns out, I think on average, most people way prefer to do business with us than them. But there is a certain pull they have of like, oh, they're the big company you use,
So for those, we have 6 minutes left with you. It went way too fast. For those CEOs who are watching and they're like, I love my employees. I'd love to do something like what Dan's doing. I don't think I could do 70,000, but maybe I can do better. What has been your advice for them? Because I've noticed that you have started a trend. There are CEOs who are following in your lead and saying that it's changed their business.
Well, not enough, but I hope so.
It
So
does need to be more. It does. I mean, although I'm a lawyer, I worked for trucking companies and I worked for other companies. And I watched, you remember 2 years ago? Oh, I should be careful what I say. Do you remember? How about let's speak in general terms? Do you remember a couple of years ago, Trump had his big tax breaks?
yes,
And the companies, I mean, fuck, man, they got a lot of money off those tax breaks. And it was how many companies actually pushed it to their employees was interesting. And then some of them only did it one time. And they were like, yay for us. And it was like a bonus or something. But then they didn't continue it. And
or they
so,
pushed a tiny token amount. Yeah,
yeah, it was like
yeah,
some
yeah. So
nominal
and again,
sprinkle of money.
this is not a political thing for me in the sense that like I I feel like these solutions work no matter what your politics are. I feel like they work no matter what side you're coming from, because on the conservative side, having a solution like a private solution to a social problem is very appealing, because that means you don't have to only rely on public institutions.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming at it more from like a progressive side of things, you can see that the kind of inequality that is preached that's mandatory clearly is not actually mandatory. And if you wanted to address that at a systemic level, you could, as many other countries have shown and as our company have shown, and work will continue to get done. If anything, you'll only get more productive, not less productive. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot. But if you're looking at it from a CEO level, I want to answer that too, because that was a great question you asked me. And as a CEO, you make it a priority that everybody in your company has the safety and security that they need to the largest extent possible. It's just such an obvious thing to do. And it's just such an obvious part of your job, and to do it at a systemic level. And so for most companies, that means they have to greatly increase the minimum that they're paying, and like whatever kind of their starting point is. And they just have to do it. But if you can't afford to do it all the way, every dollar an hour you can do will be hugely meaningful. And what will probably be even more meaningful to your team than anything else in terms of the gesture part of it is just being honest with them, letting them know that you're trying to get there, like figure out a way to get there together. But how many companies would we actually trust to do this in this environment? I think the answer is close to zero, and especially big companies. And so there's been such a breach of trust that's happened over and over again, where 5.5 years ago, my message was, let's get all the companies to do this. 5.5 years later, I don't think that we have that kind of trust to work that way together. And I think we'd have to, for example, pass a VAT, a value added tax, like a national sales tax, with a UBI that starts to redistribute the money in a more equitable way
to the
entire population. Other solutions like that basically give people some kind of a floor to stand on, so that we are not always being so overly leveraged by all these GD corporations and wealth structures.
Mm-hmm. It makes complete sense. And I'm thinking, while you're talking about all those companies who are public, and they don't, this isn't a possibility for them, because they're like, well, my investors, my God, they would just, my share price would just tank. And it's funny, when you go public, do employees truly come first in employee pay? So it's interesting to think about that.
I mean, we could, I'm like tempted to bring up 10 other things, but just looking at the time, I just want to say what a pleasure to meet you. And
same to you.
Also, like I've been reading comments and really enjoy everybody that's out there interacting, and like, thank you so much for.
Thank you. And everybody who's using Stripe, and what is the other one again?
Or like your bank for your merchant account.
Yeah, you guys switch to Gravity.
Go to our website. Do what I did. Go to our website and we will tell you if we're a good option. You can fill out like a time to talk to somebody like on our website, and somebody will call you, and they'll be really nice and professional and good to work with. Or we can send you information. I mean, we try to just, serve as many small businesses as we can. And hope to keep that going for as long as we can. But it's I just want to also just thank, the only reason I get to come on here and talk to you all is because my employees and my customers and how hard they work, and I get all this credit that I don't deserve, and they really do. So
they love you, man. I was talking to all of them before the show, and they love you. So bravo, bravo. And anybody wants a job, go reach out to Dan.
That's all on our website too. If you DM me asking for where do you find work info, I'm going to be like, yeah, I want to hire you to answer all the DMs I get where to find work info.
Yeah.
But I understand, but it is on our website.
Well, thank you so much. This has been the best interview. I've had so much fun. And thanks for your patience with the tech as well.
Oh, fun. I thought it was part of the show, honestly.
I should have made it part of the show. Like, where did Cassandra go? Yeah. She's gone. Well, thank you very, very much. Take care. And you guys switch to Gravity. It's much better than whatever the other ones are. All right, take care.
Thanks.